Something sinister lurks 2 miles deep in the Arabian Sea. Exposed horrors from an oil rig. Sarah's heart raced as she drove to the oil rig. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the abandoned houses of Bellevue, Louisiana. Each passing mile added weight to her anxiety. Whispers floated through the night air, wrapping around her like a noose. The phone buzzed in her pocket again, a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, a chill creeping up her spine, but she answered. "You shouldn't be working there, the sea is hungry." A gravelly voice slithered through the receiver. Her blood turned to ice. Dismissing it as a prank from local kids, she pushed on, but dread pooled in her gut. As Sarah arrived at the rig, darkness enveloped the colossal structure, its silhouette looming like a giant spider. The bellows of the ocean echoed, restless waves crashing against the steel, a reminder of the perilous depths lurking just below. The air tasted bitter, filled with foreboding. Something felt off. Her fellow workers avoided eye contact, whispers circling about equipment malfunctions and strange noises echoing through the night shifts. Shadows flickered under the glaring lights, and the fear among them was palpable. Days turned into nights with the same rhythm of chaos. Totally exhausted, Sarah found herself unable to escape the clutches of a deepening malaise. Coworkers began to disappear. First was Marcus, who simply vanished without a word, leaving behind only an eerie stillness. Then it was Linda, a friend and confidant, swallowed whole amidst the steel and oil of the rig. Each day, she received the phantasmagoric calls, each one more menacing than the last. "You can't protect them forever, Sarah," they would taunt. She could feel the oily tendrils of dread wrapping tighter around her heart, suffocating her hope. Nothing seemed safe anymore. The local sheriff dismissed her fears with a wave of his hand, chocolates misplaced on their desk while curfews were enforced due to the budget cuts. "You're working on an oil rig, Sarah. There's always danger," he grumbled, his indifference infuriating. She needed answers, no matter the cost, so she began digging deeper, wondering if her only refuge lay in the shadows of those she once trusted. One afternoon, as a hot breeze blew through Bellevue, she bumped into Tom, her neighbor. He had an unsettling serenity about him, the kind of man who knew the world more than it cared to show. His front porch was cluttered with strange trinkets, symbols painted in curious patterns that made her skin crawl. "You're gonna wish you stayed away from the rig. The whispers get louder, don't they?" he murmured, yet his intent gaze sent waves of unease through her. It struck her then Tom knew more than he was revealing. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The next night, with her heart pounding like a drum, Sarah decided to confront Tom. The sun dipped low, and the waves growled like a feral beast. She could feel something terrible curling in her gut, tightening like a vice as shadows moved in the periphery. Just as she reached for Tom's door, the phone rang again, that familiar whisper chilling her to the bone. "You should have never come back. The sea is hungry." Fear clawed at her insides as she stood at the threshold, not knowing if she was stepping into salvation or damnation. The weight of dread pressed hard against her chest. As she prepared to turn back, a horrifying realization sank in. She had only just begun to scrape the surface of the truth, and the horrors lurking beneath the waves were far more dangerous than she could imagine. Sarah hesitated, her breath hitching in her throat. She glanced back at the oil rig, its towering structure bowed against the bruised sky, a dark guardian over a restless sea. The phone's message echoed in her mind, sending icy fingers shooting down her spine. If she turned away now, would she let the darkness win? Steeling herself, she knocked on Tom's door. A low creak echoed from within, and he opened it with an eerie calmness. "You came," he said, eyes glittering with something she could not quite interpret. Was it relief or a more sinister anticipation? "I need to know what you know about the rig," she demanded, stepping inside despite the uncertainty that churned in her stomach. Tom lived in a world cluttered with relics of arcane knowledge, odd trinkets, faded photographs, and jars filled with strange, murky substances. The atmosphere hummed with a sense of secrecy. "You're not safe, Sarah." "Not on that rig," he replied, closing the door behind her with a quiet finality. "What do you mean?" Panic gnawed at her as shadows danced menacingly under the dim light. "People keep disappearing, Tom. We're in danger." His face hardened. "You've felt it, haven't you? The whispers, they seep in. It's not just the sea. Something has awakened, and it hungers." Each word felt like a knife, carving deeper into her reality. "What are you talking about?" The absurdity of it all made her question her sanity. She tried to keep her voice steady, but fear wrapped around her, tightening with each breath. He motioned her closer to a cluttered table where a battered map lay, marked with strange symbols. "This isn't just an oil rig. It sits atop a convergence of ancient forces, and whatever sleeps beneath wakes when disturbed." For a moment, Sarah was lost in the imagery, the depths of the ocean hiding not just oil and gas, but something far darker. "You think it's responsible for Marcus and Linda?" He nodded slowly, a grimace twisting his features. "They fed it like offerings lost to the abyss. It's calling you, Sarah. It knows you're there." Her heart threatened to explode. They'd talked about myths on the rig, joking about the sea monsters. But this was no joke. "How can I stop it?" Tom shook his head. "There's no stopping the inevitable. You can only—" He paused, considering run or hide. A frantic urge slammed through her, not knowing what menace awaited her but unwilling to surrender. Clutching Tom's arm, she felt a flicker of desperation. "I can't leave my co-workers. I have to help them. The more you dig, the deeper you go. It's a snare, Sarah." He released her, eyes filled with a warning that sent chills racing down her spine. "And if you don't break free, you'll end up just like the others." Fear surged. What choice did she have? Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something deeper pulled her towards the rig, a mix of loyalty and dread. The thought of leaving was unbearable. As she turned to leave, the phone buzzed again, vibrating violently on the table. Tom's eyes widened. "Don't answer it." But she couldn't help herself. She snatched it up, heart racing, and pressed accept. "Hello?" She listened, frozen. Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Then came the whisper, low and visceral. "The sea is hungry." The connection cut, leaving her breathless with a sense of foreboding. She realized with dawning dread that she was tethered to something far more sinister than she could imagine. Had she become a part of this dark narrative? And what awaited her next? Gathering every ounce of strength, Sarah stepped back into the night, her heart pounding with the weight of the unknown. She couldn't shake the feeling of presence, watching her every move. Each wave that crashed against the shore echoed a promise she would find the truth, or it would find her. What would she discover next? The cold wind stung Sarah's face as she stepped out of Tom's cramped apartment. She tightened her jacket and inhaled deeply, the briny scent of the sea filling her lungs. The weight of Tom's words echoed in her mind, making each breath feel like a gulp of ice-bathed water. As she made her way back to her car, shadows leapt and clawed at her from the corners of her vision. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Reaching her car, the familiar sight of the oil rig loomed in the distance, its silhouette jagged against the fading light. She wasn't ready to return, but she felt an inexplicable pull, a tether binding her to that structure, to the secrets waiting beneath its steel bones. A shiver rustled down her spine, and for a brief moment she hesitated, wondering if she had become a moth drawn toward a dangerous flame. The engine started with a sputter, the sound echoing oddly amidst the swelling night. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to shake off the lingering dread. As she navigated the narrow roads leading toward the oil station, the thought of Marcus and Linda lodged in her brain like a splinter. Their faces twisted and pain haunted her, flickering like bad film reels. She pulled into the parking lot, looking for signs of the others. The distant chatter of her coworkers echoed from the rig. They seemed so oblivious, so carefree, everything she wasn't. A sick feeling knotted in her stomach. What if they were already in too deep, unaware of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. As Sarah approached the gangway, she felt an unnatural cold, almost as if the ocean's breath had blown across land and wrapped itself tightly around her. The waves crashed with a violent rhythm, drowning her thoughts in a symphony of chaos. She called out to her coworkers, her voice overshadowed by the howls of the wind, but they didn't hear her. They were engrossed in their work, the flickering lights of the rig casting undulating shadows. "Guys! We need to talk!" she shouted, but her words were swallowed by the night. Panic clawed at her. She quickened her pace, desperate for their attention, but then something held her back. A feeling of being watched intensified. She spun around, half expecting to see Tom behind her, but found only the dark yawning mouth of the sea. Just then, a loud crash reverberated from the rig. Her heart lurched. Were they in danger? She hurried up the gangway, the metal vibrating beneath her as she ascended. As she reached the platform, she caught a glimpse of one of the crew members, a man named Ben, staring out over the edge of the rig, his expression vacant. "Ben!" she yelled, catching his attention. When he turned towards her, his eyes were wide, reflecting a mix of terror and awe. "What is happening?" "It had called me," he murmured, almost entranced, gaze drifting back to the tumultuous waves below. I can't stop it." "Stop what?" Panic surged in her chest, wild and uncontrollable. She stepped closer, but his eyes glazed over, distant as if he were no longer there. She followed his gaze to the water, and there, just under the surface, something shifted. A darkness pooled, lingering just out of reach. Then came the whisper again, the same sinister voice that had interrupted her call with the echo of the sea. It's hungry for more. Every nerve in Sarah's body ignited. The realization crashed over her like a wave. Whatever it was no longer just a myth or a story. It was real, and it was awakening. The lights on the rig flickered, casting chaotic shadows that danced around her. She could feel the fear wrapping around everyone like an ominous fog. The shadows deepened. "We need to get out of here," she urged, gripping Ben's arm. But his gaze remained fixed beyond her, entranced. As she pulled him back, a bone-chilling roar erupted from the depths. The sea surged violently, and the rig groaned, shaking under the force of something monstrous rising from below. "Run! Now!" Sarah screamed, fear overtaking her senses. The understanding settled in a race against time to save them all. But as she turned to flee, she caught a final glimpse of the water, the abyss swirling with intent. What were they truly awakening? And how far would they have to run before it was too late? The world around Sarah erupted into chaos. The air crackled with tension, thick with the scent of salt and fear. As she pulled at Ben's arm, she felt the weight of uncertainty, dragging him back to the blaring sirens echoing through the rig. "We need to warn everyone," she shouted, forcing urgency into her voice. The lights above flickered again, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to stretch toward the dark water hungrily, as if the very rig itself wanted to retreat from the looming horror below. Ben blinked, his pupils slowly focusing. What is happening?" he stammered, finally shaking out from his stupor. The terror etched on his face was a reflection of her own. The whispers from the abyss grew louder, echoing in the crevices of her mind, a malevolent choir calling to her, beckoning. "Whatever's down there is waking up." She yanked him toward the others, desperation pushing her forward. "We have to get the crew out." As they raced down the corridor, they passed coworkers who just stood there, blank expressions plastered across their faces. "Hey! You need to move! Get to safety!" Sarah shouted, but they merely swayed slightly, eyes glazed as if mesmerized by the swell of the ocean beneath them. An overwhelming roar shook the rig again, this time more violent, causing metal to creak and groan. "What is that?" Ben gasped, looking back at Sarah, who could only shake her head in disbelief. Suddenly, a deep fissure appeared in the metal floor, erupting clouds of dust and debris. A horrifying thought struck her. Was the rig becoming unstable? Was it an earthquake, or was the entity below coming for them? Then she spotted a few crew members, their faces now twisted in horror, finally responsive to the swell of chaos. "Get out! Run!" she screamed, rallying them with wild gestures. "We're in danger!" The sound of footsteps reverberated off the steel walls as others began to grasp the urgency of their situation. But just as hope flickered, another bone-rattling explosion resonated from below. The flickering lights went dark, plunging them into pitch blackness. Panic surged through the group, a stampede of bodies in the dark. "Back this way!" Sarah shouted, spinning to lead them toward the emergency exit, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she stumbled momentarily. Ben grabbed her arm, shouting, "Not that way! It's south too close!" She could hear the water thrashing now, relentless. A creeping dread wrapped around her heart. The oppressive silence of the dark made her feel blind, and the air grew heavy, thick as if the darkness itself were alive. "Help!" a voice cried out. Sarah felt a wave of nausea. It was Linda, sobbing from a corner, staring into the abyss. "It's coming! It wants us!" The crew hesitated, glancing back at the murky depths. They knew, deep in their bones, something monstrous awaited just below, eagerly seizing the chance to claim its victims. "Snap out of it!" Sarah shouted at Linda, her voice cracking. "We need to go now!" She reached out, gripping Linda's arm and pulling, but it felt like dragging a weight, and then a horrific roar split the darkness, drowning out all other sounds. The water surged beneath them, the rig lurching violently as if it were about to spill its secrets. The lights flickered back on for a second, revealing a shadow rising from the depths, its form twisting and contorting in a way that defied nature. "What the hell is that?" someone screamed as they all simultaneously stumbled backward, fear now past the boiling point. "Run!" Sarah screamed again, abandoning their small group, a desperate sprint toward the exit. But even as she ran, the terrifying slither of the shadow tugged at her mind, beckoning her back, promising knowledge of horrors beyond comprehension. She glanced over her shoulder just before the ground cracked open, and water surged through, ominous, dark, and infinitely hungry. Could she escape its call? As they reached the exit, Sarah's heart sank. The sea was alive, rolling in a malevolent tide, and the horrifying realization gripped her tightly: they might not all make it out alive. The whirling abyss enveloped the darkness behind them, and as they burst outside, the wind whipped their faces. But was the worst really over, or was it just beginning? A shudder ran through her. The echoes of the abyss promised something far worse lay ahead, waiting for that first brave step. The cold bite of the wind hit Sarah like a slap as they stumbled out. The sky was a thick blanket of bruised gray, and the once synchronized hum of machinery and engines was replaced by the thunderous roar of the ocean. Waves crashed angrily against the rig, sending plumes of spray that soaked their skin. "Keep moving!" Sarah yelled, glancing behind her at the crew members trailing. Ben was close, his breath coming in sharp gasps. Fear filled the air, hanging heavily over them like a storm cloud. They reached the edge of the platform, and she felt the earth beneath her tremble, the rig's structure groaning as if it too feared the entity below. It was more than just a fear now. It was raw terror, coursing through her veins like ice. "Where do we go?" someone asked, their eyes wide, flicking nervously toward the dark water that churned menacingly below. "Anywhere but here," Sarah cried out. "We have to find the lifeboats." They raced along the slick metal walkway, the roar of the ocean clawing at their sanity. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, making her question if they were real or just figments of her panicked mind. "Sarah, look!" Ben stopped abruptly, pointing into the swirling depths. The water thrashed violently, and for a fleeting moment, she swore she saw something massive shift just beneath the surface. Was it a trick of the light? Or a monstrous revelation? "Don't look!" she screamed, forcing herself to focus on the path ahead. "We have to keep moving!" But the voices behind them were rising, uncertainty creeping in like the very darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. As they continued, the air thickened with a palpable dread, and the stench of salt and something rotten filled her lungs. Someone screamed. She could hear loud splashes, followed by a gurgling sound. Sarah spun around just in time to see one of the crew members being pulled into the depths, arms flailing, their face twisted in pure terror. The others froze, paralyzed by the sight. One could almost hear the whisper of the abyss beckoning for more. No! We can't stop! Sarah yanked at Ben, urging him forward. But even as they fled, shadows seemed to stretch and claw at their heels, relentless in their pursuit. The wind screamed and swirled around them, a cacophony made up of their panicked breaths and the wails of the ocean. Sarah felt sweat mingling with the rain, her heart drumming like a war drum against her ribs. They rounded the corner toward the lifeboat station, and finally, the small crafts loomed ahead. But when they arrived, Sarah's stomach dropped further. Several lifeboats were missing, their lines cut. Others floated haphazardly, but not a single one looked functional. Get it ready! We can't waste time! Ben yelled, panic tearing through his voice. The others scrambled to assess the lifeboats, each more damaged than the last. What if it's too late? Someone cried, casting glances back toward the abyss, where dark water frothed hungrily. We can't think like that! Sarah snapped, anger boiling beneath her fear. We have to believe we can escape. But deep down, uncertainty hung around her like a shroud. As they hurriedly worked, a low, rumbling growl echoed from beneath the rig, a sound both unearthly and terrifying. Everything trembled again, as if the very ocean was clamoring for its due. Did you hear that? Linda whispered, voice trembling. The crew shared uneasy glances, fear mirrored in their eyes. Focus! Now! Sarah urged, adrenaline driving her. But the tension in the air was suffocating. The shadow lurking beneath them was growing, waiting for its moment. Then came another explosion from beneath, louder and closer. The water erupted, and a monstrous shape broke the surface, long, dark, and sinuous. Its eyes glowed with a haunting hunger, locking onto Sarah. Run! She screamed, instinct taking over as panic erupted in their hearts. As they turned to flee, she knew deep inside that whatever was rising from the abyss was no longer content to remain unseen. Was there any way to escape the terror lurking just below? What would it take to survive? This nightmare? The air was thick with chaos as Sarah sprinted, adrenaline slicing through the shadows. Behind her, the frantic shouts blended into a haunting chorus. Fear coated every word, each cry a nail on her already frayed nerves. The monstrous shape had reared back, arching like a titan of the deep, its glistening scales reflecting flashes of the waning light. Keep going! Don't look back! She bellowed, though the weight in her chest settled lower as the reality of their desperation crashed into her. Every person around her mirrored her panic, faces pallid, eyes wild, as if they were all caught in a nightmare that wouldn't let them go. Ben stumbled, his foot catching on a slick metal beam. He fell, sprawling across the walkway like a broken doll. Sarah! He screamed, desperation lacing his voice. The shadows seemed to sway as if eager to swallow him whole. Get up! She shouted, turning on her heel. The dark silhouette surged forward, breaking the surface with an unsettling grace. Sarah felt time warp, each heartbeat echoed louder, drowning out reason, and yet she couldn't leave him. Ben's eyes were wide with terror as he struggled to rise. The shadows shifted, water surging up from the abyss like a rogue wave, and a horrible realization gripped Sarah. The thing wasn't just hungry, it was hunting. It was toying with them, savoring the chaos. She lunged forward, gripping Ben's arm and yanking him to his feet. With one quick look back, she saw the elongated, dripping jaw of the creature snap open, and something primal in her screamed. Run! They dashed toward the metal stairs that led to the upper deck, heartbeats racing in sync with the primal terror crashing against them. As they ascended, the wind howled with angry faces, twisting into menacing shapes. The lifeboat station seemed miles away, a sanctuary of hope drifting further into the chaos. They turned a corner, and Sarah's heart plummeted again. It wasn't just the missing boats haunting them now. The station itself was a wreck, machinery dangling precariously, as if the rig were draining its last breaths. Hurry! Sarah urged, pulling Ben forward through the debris. Their feet pounded against the grating, each sound swallowed by the roar of the ocean and the growl beneath. Where do we go? Ben gasped, glancing down as the monstrous water spiraled with a voracity only nature could grasp. Shadows danced again, flickering with malicious intent. Anywhere! She yelled, rage and fear flooding her voice. There had to be a way out. Even if everything felt lost, they needed to find their way to the emergency raft stationed above. The enormity of the situation was suffocating. A screeching crash echoed as part of the rig crumbled under unseen pressure. They ducked instinctively, and Sarah felt the cold rush of fear wrap around her like a noose. "We need to climb!" she shouted, desperate for direction. Clambering up the last set of stairs, they burst onto the upper deck, the relentless wind tearing at their skin. The sky above was an angry swirl of clouds, mirroring the turmoil below. The lifeboats were only a few feet away, but the path was slick with rain and water. Her hands found purchase on the rail, heart racing as she looked out at the tumultuous sea. Their one boat remained, barely tethered. But the creature as shadow loomed closer, dark waters bubbling with ferocity. "Go! I'll hold it off!" Ben shouted, his voice fierce, but desperation tinged his words. "No!" Sarah flipped around, the words bursting forth before she could swallow them back. "We leave together!" "I want the waves crashed higher, fiercer." In that moment, Ben's expression hardened. He understood a sacrifice could mean survival. "Just go!" The growl returned, rumbling from the depths, and Sarah felt the ground shake. Panic surged, and as shadows clawed toward them, she rushed toward the raft. In that split second, her heart shattered. Sarah had no choice but to make a decision. Should she fight for Ben or save herself? With the monster as shadow looming closer, she leaped for the lifeboat, praying that whatever horror was behind her wouldn't claim them both. But the question lingered like a whisper in her mind: could she really escape the grip of the abyss? The lifeboat, at that moment, felt like the very edge of the world. The lifeboat swung gently, tauntingly, against the metal rim as Sarah braced herself against the cold, slick surface. Water lashed at her legs, a relentless predator vying for her attention. She turned back, terror pooling in her stomach. Ben was still up there, still facing down the monster. "Ben!" she screamed, voice cracking, choked by the wind. He was just a dark silhouette now, fading against the monstrous waves. A growl vibrated through the hull of the rig, reverberating in her bones. The creature was toying with him. Her heart thundered. "Jump! Just jump!" she screamed again, desperation spilling over. The lifeboat rocked violently as if in response to her panic, rippling with its own worry as the ocean grew more furious. The last she saw of Ben was a glint of fear flaring in his eyes. Then he was gone, swallowed by chaos and shadow as if he had never existed. A primal scream clawed at her throat, but she forced it down. She needed to focus. If the lifeboat was going to be their salvation, she had to get it free. With shaking hands, she grappled for the release line. The storm lashed the rig mercilessly, pouring rain and unleashing waves that crashed violently against the struts of metal. "Cut it! Cut it!" a frantic voice shouted from behind her. It was one of the others who had escaped the cabling like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Sarah turned to see a woman, wide-eyed and frantic, her hair matted and spirit shattered. "We can't stay here. We have to go." "Then help me!" Sarah shouted over the din, each word stabbed by icy winds. The woman stumbled aboard, heart racing, eyes darting to the horizon, searching for the creature that lurked beneath the surface. Glancing back once more, Sarah felt the raw edge of terror gnaw deeper. What was taking Ben? With frantic resolve, they worked together, slicing the thick ropes that anchored their lifeboat. Each cut felt like severing a lifeline, but the roar behind them grew louder, more insistent. A shadow danced just below the waves, flickering in and out of her vision. Then, with one desperate pull, the last rope snapped free, and the lifeboat screamed into the open water. It spun away, propelled by the tremendous force of the ocean's wrath, leaving the rig behind a relic of despair and death. "We did it!" the woman gasped, throwing her hands into the rain. But Sarah felt a cold chill coil through her. "We're not safe yet," she muttered, heart racing as they surged forward. But the moment of relief was fleeting. The creature shot from the depths, spray erupting as it breached the surface. It wasn't just a shadow now. It was monstrous, a ghastly yak of scales and sharp teeth, eyes wild with hunger. Row! 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 Sarah shouted, grasping an oar, but her limbs felt leaden. The realization that they were still within the beast's territory crashed over her. There was no escape, no safety, just a relentless pursuit. The creature turned on them, embodying the very abyss of the ocean. Thrashing waters enveloped the little boat, rising and falling with immense power. And maybe it'll leave us, the woman stuttered, eyes wide with panic as the beast circled. Don't you dare think that. But even as the words left Sarah's mouth, doubt seeped in. Hope flickered like a candle about to snuff out. They plunged ahead, but the waves were monstrous, crashing down with a force that threatened to swallow them whole. The creature cut through the water, its dark, glistening form moving impossibly fast. It was coming for them, relentless and hungry. Just then, Sarah caught a glimpse through the murky depths. Something gleamed, a glint of metal almost lost among the shadows. Her heart raced, an idea sparked painfully in her mind. There might be more boats, we need to find them, but where? As terror gnawed at her resolve, she tried to navigate through the churning chaos, her mind racing. But if they survived the hunt, could they possibly evade the darkness that swirled around them? The waves crested, forcing her to rock back and forth on the oars, the creature's shape rising just below the surface, waiting for that moment of weakness. Hold on! She yelled, but the words hung in the air as the lifeboat trembled precariously. Somewhere out there in the storm, amid the chaos of wind and shadow, she realized this nightmare was far from over. The very ocean was alive with curses, and to survive meant navigating through madness. Could she rally the remaining hope within her? Would the depths claim her soul, or could she find a means to escape the very darkness that sought to drag them down? In that moment of uncertainty, she knew one thing was clear: this monstrous creature wasn't the only horror lurking beneath the surface. The lifeboat bucked wildly as Sarah fought against the grip of the boat's instability. Waves pummeled them relentlessly, soaking her to the bone, the cold biting at her flesh. Desperation surged through her, igniting a raw instinct to survive. The creature circled closer. Beneath the shattered glow of lightning, its grotesque form glimmered ominously, a stark reminder of the nightmare that had taken Ben. Faster! She shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins like fire. The woman beside her struggled with the oar, her face twisted in fear. The echoes of their frantic breaths melded with the roaring wind, creating a cacophony that drowned out rational thought. The creature surged upwards, water cascading off its monstrous body in a deluge. Its maw opened, displaying rows of jagged teeth glistening with what could only be the blood of its last prey. Sarah's stomach churned. It's not just hunting us, she gasped to the woman. It's playing with us. They dipped low, timing their strokes with the crashing waves, but each vulnerable moment felt like an eternity. Jaws clicked shut just to the side of their lifeboat, teeth dangerously close to the wood. Panic tightened her throat as the salt of the ocean stung her eyes. Over there! The woman pointed to the wreckage of another lifeboat bobbing distant against the backdrop of chaos. It was a haunting specter amidst the storm of brittle hope. With a grunt, they angled their vessel, a fragile thing that seemed to hanker after the deep as much as the surface. Guided by sheer desperation, Sarah steeled herself, rowing with renewed vigor. The first pull brought them closer, the grotesque form of the creature looming behind them, undaunted. Come on, don't look back! She yelled, an instinct to protect pushing her forward, but it was hard not to look. The creature's eyes glared, burning with malice, a predator unyielding as a storm. Every swell of the water seemed to whisper promises of doom. Sarah, it's too fast, the woman said, breath coming in shallow gasps. No! We are not giving up! Sarah hissed, her resolve hardening with each stroke. They were closing the distance, the flotsam floating on the surface beginning to form outlines. There were remnants of others who had tried and failed. The image of Ben flickered in her mind, followed by a fresh wave of guilt. What had she done? The waters churned violently, a massive swell rising up ominously behind them. Without warning, the force crashed down like a judgment, knocking Sarah against the side of the lifeboat. "Hold on!" the woman shrieked, grasping wildly at the sides. Their boat staggered, and the woman let go of her oar to steady herself, eyes wide with terror. "Don't row!" Keep! Before Sarah could finish, it happened. The creature lunged from the depths, filling her vision. Its massive body erupted from the water, water cascading off its scales like rain. It swung toward them, powerful and furious. "No!" she barely managed to shout, as blinding fear surged within her. A deafening splash enveloped them, capsizing their lifeboat like a fragile toy. The world flipped upside down. Choking salt water filled her lungs. Dread enveloped her as she flailed in the depths, grasping for anything to pull her back to the surface. Panic tore at her, and heat surged from her core. She spotted a faint light of hope, maybe salvation. But as she shot upwards, gasping for air, she felt a presence lurking in the darkness just below her. The water recoiled from the beast, eager to assist in the hunt. Sarah's heart pounded furiously. What if it's over? The thought whispered, trying to crack her resolve. Digging deeper within herself, she swam toward the light, toward potential escape. But as she reached the surface and broke through the maelstrom above, horror gripped her. The woman, still floundering nearby, was caught in the undertow of the creature's fury. Its nightmarish maw opened, ready to claim its next victim. "Let her go!" Sarah screamed, panic flooding her system. She clawed at the water, time stretching in silent agony as she watched the monster pull her towards the abyss. But the light still called to her from the debris. Could she abandon hope and risk it all? Or was this the moment she faced the darkness and did something desperate? The shadows of the abyss wrapped around them what awaited below? Sarah had to make a choice. Would she dive into the unknown for a chance to save them both, or would she cling to the fading hope that both would survive? Despair and courage battled within her. And as the creature lingered beneath, waiting for its next feast, she knew dread swirled, but inaction would lead to death. She wouldn't let terror win. Sarah's lungs burned as she clawed through the water, one thought dominating her mind: save her. The creature loomed beneath, a dark specter watching with hungry eyes. Her heart raced, pounding so hard it felt like it might burst free of her chest. The woman was screaming, caught in the awful grip of the beast. Every flash of lightning illuminated the monstrous jaws as they inched closer, a reality she couldn't fully comprehend. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to act, yet she felt paralyzed, suspended between the desire to save and the fear of doom. "Hold on!" she shouted uselessly, the wind snatching her words. Desperate seconds. Sarah's mind raced to recall the lifeboat's debris. She could still save them, they just needed a chance. "Focus, Sarah! Focus!" she urged herself, glancing back at the grotesque shapes circling beneath the waves. Only fears swam there, slick and dark. With renewed determination, she shoved her limbs forward, her breath hasty and erratic, eyes scanning the floating wreckage. The shattered remains of the life raft bobbed nearby, a lifeline amidst chaos. If she could just reach it, grabbing hold of the debris, she yanked herself onto it with all the strength she could muster. But the cold pierced her skin, and she felt the chill creeping through her bones, making her limbs weak. "Sarah! Help!" The woman's voice pierced through the storm, rising above the roar, a desperate key breaking through her daze. Sarah peered through the torrent, spotting her friend, flailing in the water, eyes wide with terror. The monster lurked beneath them, calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike. The urgency clouded her judgment. Should she jump back in? Taking a breath, she thought of Ben, of his laughter that seemed light years away. "Keep fighting! I'm coming!" Sarah shouted, hope fueling her determination. She slipped off the makeshift raft, aware that the abyss beckoned beneath her. The surface felt treacherous, waves pushing against her. The creature surged upward once more, now right at the edge of sight, its maw gaping wide, ready for the kill. Adrenaline surged anew, and with a frantic kick, she pushed herself down, reaching for the woman who was still grasping wildly against the tide. "Grab my hand!" Sarah yelled, extending her arm towards her friend. Time slowed the moment stretched out painfully. The beast roared beneath, a sound that vibrated through the water and rattled her core. It was now or never. With her heart thundering like drums, Sarah watched as the woman's eyes met hers, glimmering with unshed tears. She lunged forward. A brilliant flash of silver threatened to slice through the darkness as the creature surged, its snout breaking the water close to her friend. Sarah felt icy fingers grasp at her ankle. Panic twisted her gut. "No!" she screamed, her voice swallowed by the storm. The weed-like tendrils of fear wrapped tighter around both their hearts as the woman inched closer, arms stretching out. The creature's past victims flashed through Sarah's mind, faces of horror, swallowed whole by despair. They would not join that list. Just as the woman's fingers brushed against her own, the maw opened wide to claim its next meal. "No!" Sarah thrust her hand out with a final push, her fingers closing around her friend's wrist. But the surge of the water combined with the creature's might slammed them down. They plunged into the depths, the surface light bending and warping above like a distant memory. The cold wrapped around them, and Sarah's vision blurred as they fought against the force pulling them under. A sudden jolt rocked her. Something had released. Was it the creature? Or their struggling bodies tired from the fight? Terror intertwined with a glimmer of hope. As they sank, breathing grew more difficult, the darkness settling like a shroud. Panic bubbled up, but then it struck her. Sarah could feel the monster's approach, a presence lurking just behind them, rejuvenated from the hold it had on the woman. "We need to swim," she gasped, pulling with sheer will against the tide, desperately guiding her friend upward, her strength waning. But as they broke the surface, gasping and desperate for air, Sarah felt something coil around her ankle. The creature had returned for them, ready to drown hope in a tide of despair. "Hold on!" she shouted, her grip trembling around her friend's wrist. But could she hold on long enough to escape the abyss? Sudden silence enveloped them, and for an instant, all Sarah heard was the rhythm of their hearts. Then a deafening roar shattered the calm, crashing upon them like a wave, and a dreadful realization crept into her mind. How much longer could she fight before the monster took what remained? The storm raged on, battering the lifeboat as Sarah and the woman clung precariously to the surface. Dark clouds roiled menacingly overhead, mirroring the chaos that churned beneath them. The icy grasp of despair was crawling up Sarah's spine as she realized that swimming might not be enough. The beast's grip around her ankle tightened, dragging her slowly down into the deep, into the abyss that devoured Ben. "No!" she screamed, determination flooding her veins like fire. If she was meant to end like this, no, she would not let it claim her. Clutching her friend's wrist tighter, she kicked against the weight pulling her down. With a surge of primal fear, Sarah flung her body upward, pulling the woman with her as she struck out again towards the lifeboat, the dark wave crashing around them. The creature would not have its way. She was tired of yielding. "Keep kicking!" Sarah gasped, their limbs thrashing wildly through the cold salt water. The surface shimmered just ahead, a silvery beacon amidst the swirling dread. Something powerful surged beneath them, a dark force ascending. Sarah turned her head just in time to see the great maw open wide, glistening teeth poised. Time seemed to freeze, the heartbeat of the ocean thrumming in her ears, nearly drowning out her own frantic pulse. It was all or nothing. The surface light shimmered, just within reach. With a primal roar of defiance, Sarah and her friend propelled upwards with one final push. Fueled by desperation, they burst through the chaos into the open air, gasping for breath. "Get to the raft! Hurry!" she screamed, her voice raw with exertion. They splashed towards the remnants of the lifeboat just a few feet away, every stroke feeling like a battle against the devil on their heels. The chaos of the storm muffled their voices, but they could feel it, the creature circling, lurking, waiting. At last, they clambered atop the upturned remnants of the lifeboat, pulling themselves clumsily onto the surface. They gasped, eyes wide, trying to comprehend their unexpected survival. Sarah's heart was still racing, coursing with urgency, but then the shadows beneath them convulsed, rising up with vengeance. The swirling chaos coalesced, and with a deafening roar, the creature erupted from the depths once more, a colossal mass of rage and hunger. Water frothed and roiled as it lunged for them, jaws snapping, the fury of the ocean captured in its storm-tossed body. "Row!" Sarah yelled with every ounce of breath left, shoving aside the fear clawing at her gut. They bound themselves to survival, hastily finding makeshift oars among the wreckage. With frantic strokes, they pushed against the impending doom, fighting against the monstrous waves crashing around them, each moment stretching on forever. The creature lunged again, sending up waves like a tidal wave of panic. Then, Sarah spotted a faint shimmer beyond the chaos, the dark shape of another lifeboat, partially afloat, promising escape. "Over there!" she screamed, pointing even as dread weighed heavy on her heart. "We can make it!" With renewed motivation, they angled their makeshift vessel towards safety. Bursts of adrenaline coursed through them as they rowed, the swirling mist from the creature engulfing them, each stroke a desperate prayer. The creature circled closer, eyes locked onto them like a predator savoring its prey. But Sarah felt the spark of defiance ignite once more, pumping through her veins. They would not be lost in the depths, whatever it took, they would fight together. Finally reaching the lifeboat's edge, Sarah pulled herself up, wretched metal cutting into her palm. The woman scrambled beside her, gasping, eyes wide with fear and determination. "We have to untie it. Now!" With shaking hands, they worked furiously to free the lifeboat from its moorings, feeling the growl of the creature just below, anticipating another strike. "All together!" Sarah shouted, feeling the weight of time pushing down on them. With a final, desperate pull, the rope snapped, and they surged outwards into the sea. But as they sped away, the dark form of the creature broke through the waves, nearly capsizing them. Sarah and her friend fought to maintain balance, their hearts pounding in unison. "Turn it! Turn it!" Sarah shouted, urgency electrifying the air around them. They spun the lifeboat around, racing against the storm, against despair, against the inevitable pull of the abyss. Dull flashes of lightning illuminated the churning ocean, and they felt the creature's eyes boring into their backs. They could almost hear the whispers in the wind, the sea's hunger echoing in their bones. "Keep going!" the woman cried, determination bursting forth like light through the darkest night. The lifeboat danced over the angry surf, propelled by sheer will. They were alive, a spark within the storm, and although haunted by loss, they fought fiercely against despair. The sight of distant land flickered along the horizon, a glimmer of sanctuary. With every ounce of strength, they pushed forward into the unknown. Behind them, the ocean roared, the abyss beckoning, reminding them of Ben. "We didn't lose him," Sarah whispered, her heart aching. Together they rowed with a fervor, together they would carry the memories of those they lost. Their courage would push past the endless darkness, allowing hope to blossom. Sarah felt her spirit lift, as the beast faded into the shadows, the phantom of the abyss barely a flicker in the periphery now. They would survive. They would find a way back. United, they faced the storm as they navigated toward the horizon, toward the light. And in that moment, they realized their greatest strength together. They would forge a new path, resilient against whatever darkness lay ahead. As dawn broke, the glow of the sun pushed back the shadows, and they embraced the light. The sea was still vast, but they would not waver. Through grief, they would find healing. Through fear, they would discover strength. The abyss may have its hunger, but theirs was a hunger for life, for connection, for each other. A new chapter awaited. Unwilling to surrender to the depths, they embraced the tides of change. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel through these actions. You know it matters.